that's not
sort
funny
of give
at
you
all.
perspective outside of what you're doing for yourself.
Yeah.
And what about judging? I know I've taken some painting classes and stuff, and this fear of, being the artist and doing well, doing the right job, the good job. You can get trained in how to paint and how you're supposed to do things. Like, who really judges whether you're a good writer or not? Like, that's the question. Like, for yourself, does it, is it the fact that it is out there, people are reading it? Is it your friend who reads it and whatever? Is it yourself or all of the above? Like, who judges writing? What's a good writer?
I guess they're all judges to some extent. I guess it's a matter of which judges you pay attention to or you care about their opinions. This is the whole dicey thing about doing anything public is you put your sense of well-being in the hands of other people, oftentimes strangers. That's the whole thing that you get reviewed and some person likes it and you go, oh, wow, well, that's an intelligent person. They really know what they're talking about. And then someone else goes, there could be quite scathing, at times. And you think, wow, what was that about? And you talk to yourself, and you think to yourself, well, obviously that person's unhappy and they're miserable or they're jealous or they've got a problem if they couldn't see it, right? Those are kind of...
So do you have to have a shell, kind of,
and not take it? Yeah.
Has that grown or changed from when you... It must have.
Oh yeah, you get thicker skinned and you develop a bit more distance, and you have to. Otherwise, there'd be no point in going public at all if you weren't, capable to some extent, taking it on the chin sometimes. Yeah.
So what's it like? Like, you were living in Vancouver, lots of stimulation, people, stuff happening, and now you're on Mayne Island. Is it stimulating enough to be in nature and isolated to encourage your writing?
Nature's never inspired me. No interest in nature. I mean,
Oh,
nature's good.
The whale.
The whale's good.
Gave
Well,
me
that
a
was
tear.
that was
gave me a
that's,
tear.
well, that was a whale, and that was because it was my son was in it, so it was. But yeah, generally I don't go out and take a walk in the forest and groove on the tree. I mean, I do that. It's great, trees. Who doesn't like trees? But that doesn't.
So do you find it hard writing on Mayne Island for that there's not that action sort of or stimulation?
No, there's enough stuff going on the island in terms of people and not, or just in my head. What I find generally the most inspiring thing is other books or movies. I get really inspired looking at stuff like that. I like the way film edits itself together and the way it structures itself, and the way other books, how they operate and see what somebody else is doing. And I find that really the most inspiring thing is other art and visual arts as well. I'm very, drawing and painting, these things kind of all add
Combine.
To it. Yeah.
Well, interesting you say filming when that's sort of where you started. So obviously you had that interest in
and I think
something for you.
And I think I write fairly visually. People often said, you could make a movie out of this. You could, this seems script-like at times, so I think I write very much for the eye.
Well, it's interesting because I'm really enjoying this book. I haven't finished it, and I want to see what happens, particularly to the relationship. It's in Vancouver, which is interesting to sort of have key places that and
Right.
And sometimes I wonder, if somebody had asked me if that would be something I'd be attracted to, I would almost think, well, what kind of book would that be? That I would be, drawn into a book like that.
You mean that Vancouver's not a suitable setting?
Well, yeah, or it's just too close.
Familiar.
Yeah,
right.
And so it's not sort of,
A real life happens elsewhere. In
or
real
something.
cities.
Yeah, something
Right.
like that. But the one thing, how is it described here? He says, lean, crisp about your book. And to me, this isn't the right way to describe it. Again, words, how do you, express yourself? But it's almost like the book is like music.
This one in particular?
Yes.
What kind of music?
And not rock and roll,
Sure.
but this moving, don't know how to describe it, sort of waves, which is really pleasant. It's really, for me, pleasant to read. And yet, interesting, I'm getting involved in the people. Again, kind of intimate, touching on intimate things without it being hard to deal with. Talk about this book a bit. Again, it was based on a family member, right? Or was this book the one?
Well, yeah, that was the initial stepping off point.
Right.
But,
and so how, to me, it must be so hard to start off with whatever, and say you have your characters, Cyril, is that how you say it? Cyril, Connie, how do you move forward, and do you see the end? And it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about
some
that.
people tell me they write always towards an end. If you don't know where you're going, you can't. I've never known where the end was. To me, it's part of the fun of finding out. Why would you bother if you knew where you're going?
Why would
it might take
there?
A little bit of the fun of the journey out of there. But then I guess I do a lot of revision. Just getting in there and churning around and finding out what's going on en route is part of the fun for me, and or just the obsession. And it's just a kind of a habit of mind to see things in terms of narrative. So, So
do you partly become who these people are? Is that part of the process?
I suppose. Inevitably, you think about them, and your just mind continually churns. I can remember walking home from school once when I was 12 or 13, and I actually stopped on the sidewalk, which was in and of itself a strange thing to do for me, for a really hyper self-conscious, teenager to stop and be seen to stop on the street, because there'd be cars going by and they'd say, "Hey, that guy stopped on the street. Why is he doing that?" But I stopped because I had come to this epiphany, which was that my mind never shuts up. I suppose everybody's head's like that. I don't know, but it was always churning. Scenarios. Every person I saw, it turned into a scenario. Didn't matter whether you knew them or not. You were somehow involved with them, gloriously, ingloriously. There
was a story there.
Everything was an interaction, and it rolled on itself, and that developed, and then this came onto it, and then you moved over here, and you just wake up from this ongoing series of scenarios that never ceased unwinding on my head. And for some reason, this particular day, walking home from school, something in me stepped outside and said, "Man, you sure do that a lot." And it was just, it was a real sense of looking at the way my mind functions.
Interesting. What kind of child were you? Were you interested in, did you read a lot of books? And
not really, no.
Were you encouraged to do that, or
I was into sports.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't think I really read other than The Cat in the Hat. I don't think I ever really read a novel until I was about 15. It's pretty late on that.
Well,
In fact,
it's really interesting that you say you were into sports, because very much you, this is why I say it's kind of intimate about yourself when it comes to the chainsaw and doing the boat thing in this book, that somehow this wasn't your kind of thing to do. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah. Chainsaws are kind of terrifying things, People lose fingers and parts of their bodies. And it's the mechanical thing. It's I couldn't do the camera work in film school or the editing. That seemed very alien to me to do that. Dealing with machinery has never been my forte, right? So, and dealing with a machine that is potentially so dangerous was
scary, terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I had a lot of pratfalls, mishaps. Fortunately, none of them,
did anything to
yes,
or
but,
anyone else.
No one that I'll admit to about,
And so, are you writing now? Is there a book coming out? Well, are you constantly writing? I guess you are.
Oh yeah, I always got something churning along. I've got a collection of travel stories, and they're all set. All but about one of them are set overseas, And
are these places you've been?
Yes, I did a lot of traveling in my 20s and 30s. I've included, I've been collecting old postcards some dating back to 1900 through the early decades of the century. I guess probably the most recent one is probably from the 40s or 50s. And so I've got these old postcards, and I've written new text for so in between each story is one of these old funky old postcards.
And where'd you get the postcards?
I've been collecting them in secondhand stores and
interesting.
antiquarian bookshops and places like that, and that's so it's got a whole visual side to it. The whole, these neat old postcards. Which people don't send postcards much anymore, I don't think.
They don't letter write either.
No, they don't. But
Yeah.
so that's kind of dates the book a little bit, I suppose. But it
But
gives it a
that's
whole visual.
because it's like a history and a past.
Yeah, and it gives
that
it
disappears.
a whole visual side to it. So hey, it's a book with pictures, which is. So I think that's what I'm working. That's probably going to come out next.
Can you say there's an average amount of time? I guess obviously it depends on the book that you might spend writing, or writing on something and then maybe leave that and go to something else, or how do you always complete something before you move on?
No, I've got things sitting in various states of incompleteness. Yeah.
And then get back to later,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
How does your family, you've been with Eden for quite a while, and you have a son. How does your family helped your writing? And the move to Mayne Island was kind of Eden's decision, not decision, but move.
I'm stymied on that. Well, it's just part of when you go into you spend some time with a pencil and pad, or,
Is your family in some of your writing? It must be. It must be.
I guess inadvertently,
there's
it's so much a kind of a compilation process. The writing, you're taking things from here, there, everywhere. Stuff that you see, in the street, at home, in a family, on
Just
the bus, on the boat.
On the ferry on the way over here.
Yeah, it's whatever you see, and bits of conversation is always accruing. And you can pull that up, and that might fit in here. And so there's very much a sense of the collage quality to things. At least in terms of early drafts. And I'm a great fan of, or a proponent of, just write it, get it down, get some text down, and you can don't be too precious about it. You can always turf it. It'll still exist somewhere else. And you can maybe reuse it again somewhere.
Do you love what you do? Is this do you get high when you're completed or you're satisfied with something you've done?
Yeah, you get really excited. You think you've come up with something that is, it's something, especially something you didn't intend.
Well, thank you for doing this. And I've enjoyed the Mayne Island book, and I'm really enjoying this, and I can't wait to see how it goes.
Good.
Thanks.